The U.S. Supreme Court will not make a ruling on the case of a transgender teenager who wants to use the school restroom of the student's gender identification. The court had been expected to hear arguments on this matter later this month. Chief Legal Correspondent Shannon Bream has details tonight from New York. Good evening, Shannon.
Hi, Brett. Well, just weeks ahead of those scheduled arguments, the court said today it will not weigh in on the merits of the case, but the fight is far from over. Gavin Grimm, who was born female but now identifies as male, has been at the center of the case for years and knew the legal dispute may drag on far beyond graduation day. I talked with Grimm about that possibility before we learned the case would be sent back down to a lower court.
My goal now, and it has been for a while, is certainly to benefit other students. My high school experience has been frankly ruined by this situation. I will never be able to experience the full opportunities that all my peers have been able to experience.
Lead counsel for Grimm, senior ACLU staff attorney Joshua Block said today, quote, "This is a detour, not the end of the road, and will continue to fight for Gavin and other transgender people to ensure that they are treated with the dignity and respect they deserve." The legal battle was sparked by an Obama administration directive mandating that schools allow transgender students to use the facilities of their choosing or risk losing federal funding. The Trump administration withdrew the directive, Attorney General Jeff Sessions saying it did not contain sufficient legal analysis. West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, who led a coalition of nearly 24 states opposed to the Obama mandate, said of the High Court's decision today, quote, "This is a major victory for states and local school districts across our nation." The Supreme Court has ordered the Fourth Circuit to now reconsider the case in light of the Trump administration's guidance on the matter. Brett.
Shannon, thank you. We'll follow this. A judge, meantime, in Oregon could be facing some serious repercussions for allegedly helping an illegal immigrant evade federal agents. Correspondent Dan Springer has that story from Seattle tonight.
It was a standard court calendar at the Multnomah County Justice Center in Portland, Oregon. Among the cases, 22-year-old Didier Pacheco, there to plead guilty to drunk driving. The Mexican construction worker is in the U.S. illegally, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents waited out in the hallway to arrest Pacheco and have him deported. But when court was done for the day, the courtroom door was locked. Pacheco was long gone.
This individual was allowed to leave that courtroom through a doorway that is not a public doorway, and which ultimately led to his ability to leave the courthouse undetected by ICE.
Now, Judge Monica Herranz is under internal investigation for possibly helping Pacheco evade the feds. The theory is that he didn't exit the courtroom through the door used to bring inmates in and out, but this door behind the bench is reserved for court employees. It leads to court staff offices and a staircase to a first-floor exit. His attorney had warned him.
I found my client, told him that I'd seen ICE agents outside.
Even though it's a federal crime to shield an illegal alien from ICE detection, the U.S. attorney has decided not to prosecute Herranz. Instead, he warned judges it would not be tolerated again, but she could face discipline from the court.
I don't want anything that in the eyes of the public undermines the integrity and neutrality of the justice system being done.
A national conservative talk show host based in Portland thinks the judge's days on the bench should be over.
I think as a lawyer, her law ticket should probably get punched because I think she helped a criminal to escape.
Judge Monica Herranz declined to give us a comment. As for the undocumented immigrant she apparently helped, ICE nabbed him outside the same courthouse 2 weeks later after another hearing. He's now awaiting deportation in New Mexico. Brett?
Dan, thank you. The head of the Congressional Black Caucus is apologizing to White House counselor Kellyanne Conway over a crude joke he made last week. It happened at the Washington Press Club Foundation Congressional Dinner. Louisiana Democrat Cedric Richmond referenced a picture of Conway kneeling on a couch in the Oval Office.
Kellyanne and the picture on the sofa. But I really just want to know what was going on there, because, you know, I won't tell anybody. And you can just explain to me that circumstance, because you really look kind of familiar in that position there.
Sunday, Richmond released a statement apologizing to Conway and everyone else who, quote, found his comments offensive. Stocks were down today. The Dow lost 51. The S&P 500 dropped 8. The Nasdaq fell 22. Iran and North Korea are once again raising the stress level at the Pentagon. Both nations continue to test ballistic missiles that could threaten American warships and bases, but the real fear is that North Korea is getting closer to having a missile that could reach the United States. The past U.S. presidents have done little to stop them. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the latest from the Pentagon tonight.
The Pentagon says the North Korean launch involved multiple missiles, most of them old Scuds. 4 fell within 190 miles of Japan, raising alarm among U.S. allies. But it's North Korea's intent to master long-range missiles that has Washington worried.
They have an ICBM that could reach the United States. We've seen them parade them around. We've seen them in the factory. What they haven't done is test it.
What stands out about this test, the second under President Trump, is how North Korea is testing missile units to see how they would perform in an actual war. That, according to Jeffrey Lewis, a non-proliferation ballistic missile expert at the Monterey Institute.
The North Koreans are, I think, in the process of giving nuclear weapons to their missile units, and that's what they're practicing now, is they're practicing to use those nuclear weapons early on in a conflict.
The test comes as more than 3,000 U.S. troops arrived in South Korea for an annual joint war game. The administration's response was muted amidst a report from the New York Times that the Obama administration engaged in cyber efforts to stall North Korea's missile program. Quote, the United States strongly condemns the DPRK's ballistic missile launches tonight, which violate UN Security Council resolutions. The North Koreans also test-fired a missile in mid-February while President Trump hosted the Japanese Prime Minister at Mar-a-Lago. Today, Prime Minister Abe looked visibly concerned when he addressed Japan's parliament after the latest test.
Japan will collect and analyze information regarding this issue. Japan has also lodged strong protest against North Korea. The ballistic missile fired this time shows clearly that North Korea has become a new kind of threat.
Iran, meantime, tested 2 short-range ballistic missiles over the weekend, destroying a floating barge in the Gulf of Oman. The Fateh 110 is designed to target ships at sea.
Navy officials tell Fox News a U.S. surveillance ship had to change course in the Strait of Hormuz after Iranian fast boats approached. And we've just learned, Brett, that President Trump spoke with Japan's Prime Minister Abe to discuss North Korea's latest missile test. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin, live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. Israeli police reportedly entered the residence of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today to question him for a 4th time in a pair of corruption investigations. They concern Netanyahu's alleged ties with top executives in media, Hollywood, and international business. The Prime Minister has denied wrongdoing and claims he is the target of a media witch hunt. It has been said many times that politics makes for strange bedfellows, and the same is true for war. Case in point, U.S. forces and Iranian-backed Shiite militias working both against ISIS. Correspondent Benjamin Hall reports tonight. It brings up serious questions about what happens in the future there.
The battle for Mosul is progressing, slowly but surely. But as it does so, questions are now being asked about who gains influence in the aftermath. Shia militias backed by Iran have played a major role in the battle, with over 100,000 soldiers swelling their ranks. But among them are groups who have fought against and killed U.S. forces. Fox News recently talked to the spokesman for one of these groups, the League of Righteous, in Baghdad.
Yes, indeed, our league has fought against the Americans. We took part in various operations, and usually some people died. We cannot be partners with the United States in this battle. There are clear differences between us.
However, in December, these militias, said to be directed by infamous Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, were officially incorporated into the Iraqi army, meaning they are now technically on the same side as the U.S. Colonel John Dorian, spokesman for the U.S. coalition, told us that for the moment there was no direct communication between the U.S. and the militias.
They're just now doing the rule-making for its implementation. So the ramifications of exactly how that's going to work out, what our interaction will be with those groups, that all has yet to be determined.
Iraqi civilians fleeing the fighting have also reported war crimes committed by the militias. Colonel Dorian said he was aware of these.
Well, we've seen some of the same reports that you have. In any type of human rights violations, these things are not acceptable to the government of the United States.
But former Vice President of Iraq, Dr. Ayad Alawi, was more straightforward.
We came now to a point that the Iraqis can't fight for themselves. We are paying the price for relying on others, including the growth of the militias.
He went on to say that Iranian influence did need to be addressed, and soon.
We can see now what is happening in Mosul. It's going to be either to make or break the country.
He also said that defeating ISIS was just the beginning, and that what came afterwards was as important. And that's because for all the heavy lifting the US military is doing, it may well be Iran who is waiting in the wings to benefit. Bret?
Benjamin, thank you. Republicans roll out their Obamacare repeal and replace legislation. It's called the American Health Care Act. We will go over it with the panel as it's just breaking tonight when we come back.